Hi, my name is Paul, and I'm the pastor of Living Stones Christian Reformed Church, and I'm making some of these small videos to help us understand some of the elements of the Bible, to better inhabit the Bible, to better live within this huge story that the Bible is. And in my last video, I talked about altars and how altars, in fact, bridge and represent the distance we have between God. They represent what happens when a holy God comes into contact with a sinful people. And in fact, they flesh out why, say, the New Testament imagery of hell has a lot to do with fire. I want to talk a little bit more about this, and I might as well erase the whole thing and just redraw it, and talk a little bit then about how this all works out in space. Again, you have a firmament, you have the waters separated from the dry land, you have heaven above. Now all of this space has meaning the way the Bible tells its story. And as we said before, altars and sacrifices bridge the difference or the distance or the divorce of heaven and earth. Now, one of the things that you'll notice in some of the desert wandering passages in the Old Testament is how much smoke and fire there is with a lot of different elements. For example, the children wander in the desert, and what accompanies them? It's a pillar of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night. Now, what does that mean? Well, what is this pillar doing? In a sense, this pillar is over the tabernacle. In a sense, what this represents is that what the tabernacle is, which is, in a sense, God's embassy. It's God's house. It's in some ways, during the desert wandering, God's Winnebago, his RV, that he's traveling around with the people, with everyone living in tents. Connected with it, of course, the altar, which bridges heaven and earth. Well, the imagery of this pillar is very much, again, the connection between heaven and earth. And that is how the Israelites were supposed to understand their role. That their role is, in fact, to be this burning bush. They are the connection between heaven and earth. So it's a pillar of smoke by day, and it's a pillar of fire by night. This is, in fact, connecting heaven and earth. And you'll find a lot of connections between heaven and earth in the Old Testament. One of the most dramatic ones that you'll find is the Tower of Babel. Now, when we read the Tower of Babel, we hear the story about them building a tower, but what's lost on us is the sense of what this tower is for. An ancient would have fully understood what this tower is for, and in fact, the text is very clear on what this tower is for. They want to build this tower to make a name for themselves and to reach up to heaven. If you read, for example, in the book of Genesis, where Jacob is sleeping, and in the middle of the night he has a dream, and he sees this stairway leading to heaven, and he's very excited because this is Bethel, this is the house of God, this is where heaven touches earth, and Jacob is terribly excited. Now, Jacob connects that to a place, but in some ways, it's really connected with his family. But at the Tower of Babel, the reason for this, the idea behind the Tower of Babel is that, well, what we figure we can do with our economics and our power and the technology of the brick and our architectural technology is we are going to build a tower all the way up to heaven. Well, why do they want to get up to heaven? Well, in a sense, what happens in the garden is that the gardeners rebel. And God, being enormously generous, says, okay, I will divorce myself from you. I'm going to give you over to each other, which is going to be a curse, but there's going to be a distance between us. The Tower of Babel is about, we're going to build a tower, we're going to bridge this distance, and we're not only going to occupy earth, we're going to take control of heaven. And this is why God in the story confuses the languages and basically says, do you think you can take me on? Why don't you try taking on each other? And in fact, that's what happens when their languages are confused. They can't organize, they can't get anything going, and everything, in fact, stops. And so you see in the pillar of fire, you see in the Tower of Babel, you can see it in Jacob's ladder. You can also see it, for example, in Elijah. When Elijah, he doesn't die, God comes for him, but what does God come for him with? God comes for him with a chariot of fire. Well, why of fire? Well, heaven, fire, sun, all those things hang together. So what kind of chariot would you need? You need a chariot of fire. The chariot of fire comes down, picks up Elijah, and in fact takes him to heaven. Now, all of this up-down stuff is pretty important in the Bible. The Bible will talk about the starry hosts. The Bible will talk about the clouds. The Bible has all of these imageries, and they all have association with the relationships between God and ourselves. Again, part of my purpose for these videos is that when we read the Bible, we often, as modern people, read clouds and we think, oh, that's water vapor. But in the ancient world, they saw it in very different ways. When we look up at the skies, we see the stars, we say, oh, that's pretty. In the ancient world, that had a lot of meaning. And so when we read the Bible, all of these elements are infused with meaning. And what I hope is that we will, in fact, find ways to see this meaning when we read the text ourselves. So again, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them in and leave me a question or a comment. I'd love to hear from you.